September 1788. 100,000 Austrian soldiers march toward the Ottoman frontier. Not a single enemy is in sight. And yet, by morning, 10,000 of them will lie dead or wounded, killed not by the Turks, but by each other. Emperor Joseph II has a vision: crush the Ottoman Empire and expand Habsburg dominance across the Balkans. He assembles one of the largest armies in European history, a force of nearly 100,000 men. But this army carries a fatal defect that no general can fix. These soldiers come from every corner of the Habsburg Empire: Austrians, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Serbs, Croats, Romanians, Italians. Many of them speak entirely different languages, and most of them have never fought together before. Picture this: a single regiment where the officers bark orders in German, but half the soldiers only speak Hungarian. Another unit understands only Romanian. In the chaos of battle, a command to retreat sounds like gibberish to the man standing next to you. Historians have identified at least a dozen distinct languages spoken across this army. It is not a unified fighting force. It is a powder keg of miscommunication waiting for a spark. The army reaches the town of Karánsebes, in what is now modern-day Romania, on the banks of the Timis River. They are hunting the Ottoman forces, who are reported to be somewhere nearby. Tensions are high, supplies are running low, and discipline is fraying at the edges. On the night of September 17th, a group of Hussars, light cavalry scouts, are sent across the river to reconnoiter the far bank. What they find will change everything. The Hussars cross the Timis and find no trace of the Ottomans. What they do find is a group of Romani travelers with barrels of Schnapps for sale. The scouts, exhausted and far from their officers, do what any 18th century soldier would do. They buy the Schnapps. All of it. They set up makeshift tables and begin drinking heavily into the night. The army scouts are supposed to be its eyes and ears. Instead, they are getting catastrophically drunk. Within the hour, a company of infantry crosses the river and stumbles upon the Hussars' impromptu tavern. The foot soldiers want a share of the Schnapps. The Hussars refuse. Voices rise. Threats are exchanged in languages neither side fully understands. A scuffle breaks out. One of the Hussars, either in anger or panic, draws his weapon. A single gunshot shatters the night air. And in that one moment, a catastrophe begins that no one can stop. The infantry soldiers, hearing the shot, assume the worst. The Ottomans have ambushed them in the dark. Some begin to flee back toward the main camp. Others fire blindly into the treeline. The Hussars, now under fire from their own comrades, shoot back. And then someone, to this day, no one knows exactly who, screams the single most devastating word possible: Turci, Turci, Turks. But there are no Turks anywhere. That one word travels through the darkness like a plague. Turci. It leaps from mouth to mouth across the riverbank, reaching the main camp within minutes. Soldiers who were sleeping moments ago are jolted awake by screaming men sprinting through the camp, shouting about an Ottoman attack. Remember, most of these men speak different languages. They cannot ask questions. They cannot verify. All they hear is chaos, gunfire, and a word that sounds like death. Entire regiments grab their weapons and begin firing into the darkness at shapes they cannot identify. They are shooting at shadows. They are shooting at each other. And they have no idea. Here is where the language barrier becomes truly lethal. Austrian officers ride through the chaos on horseback, screaming "Halt! Halt!", trying desperately to restore order. But to the Hungarian and Romanian soldiers, who don't speak German, the shouted word "Halt" sounds terrifyingly similar to Allah. They believe Ottoman soldiers have infiltrated the camp itself. The panic doesn't just continue, it metastasizes. Men who moments ago were confused are now genuinely terrified, convinced the enemy is among them, wearing their own uniforms. Trust evaporates. Every unfamiliar face becomes a potential enemy, and the killing accelerates. An artillery commander, hearing what he believes is a massive Ottoman assault from the east side of camp, orders his cannons loaded with grapeshot. He fires directly into the massed ranks of his own infantry. The explosions rip through hundreds of men at close range. Cavalry units, disoriented by the cannon fire, charge through their own lines in a blind stampede. Tents are trampled. Supply wagons are overturned and set ablaze. The camp, which stretches for miles, is now a landscape of fire, screaming, and death. From above, it would look exactly like a battle. Because it is won, just not against any enemy. Emperor Joseph II himself is caught in the maelstrom. Accounts from the period describe the emperor attempting to rally his troops on horseback, shouting commands that vanish into the roar of cannon and musket fire. His horse, panicked by an explosion, throws him violently. According to several contemporary sources, the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire lands face first in a ditch. Some accounts say a creek. His bodyguards drag him to safety as the battle rages around him. The supreme commander of 100,000 men cannot stop them from destroying each other. That is how complete the breakdown has become. For hours, the battle continues in total darkness. Musket flashes illuminate brief, horrifying snapshots. Soldiers bayoneting men in their own regiment. Cavalrymen slashing at infantrymen wearing the same white uniform. Units that attempt to form defensive squares end up firing volleys into friendly forces doing the exact same thing 50 yards away. The few officers who understand what is actually happening cannot make themselves heard over the din. Some are shot by their own men while trying to intervene. By the time the first gray light of dawn creeps over the Timmy's Valley, the shooting finally, mercifully, begins to slow. And then the sun rises, and 10,000 Austrian soldiers lie scattered across the fields and roads around Karánsebes. Dead, wounded, trampled beneath hooves and wagon wheels. Not by Ottoman swords, not by enemy cannons, by their own army. The survivors stare at the carnage in stunned, absolute silence. Muskets still smoking, cannons still warm, and the terrible, dawning realization settling over every man. That every single casualty was inflicted by the soldiers standing right next to them. 2 days later, the Ottoman Sultan's army finally arrives at Karánsebes. They find abandoned equipment, bloodstained fields, and no resistance whatsoever. The Austrians have scattered in full retreat. The Ottomans take the city without firing a single shot. The aftermath is staggering. Contemporary estimates place Austrian casualties between 1,000 and 10,000. The numbers vary wildly depending on the source, and most historians today believe the higher figure may be exaggerated. But what is not disputed is that the Habsburg army suffered a devastating, self-inflicted defeat that crippled its entire campaign against the Ottomans. Emperor Joseph II, humiliated and reportedly suffering from illness worsened by his fall, never fully recovers. He dies less than 2 years later, in February of 1790. Some historians whisper that the shame of Karánsebes followed him to his grave. Now, here's what most people do not know. The earliest detailed account of this battle doesn't appear until nearly a century after it happened, in an 1866 Austrian military history. Some modern historians question whether the event was this catastrophic at all, or whether it was embellished over decades of retelling. But something undeniably happened at Karánsebes that night. Austrian military records confirm unusual losses. The army did retreat before Ottoman engagement. The real question isn't whether the Austrian army fought itself. It's how much of the legend matches the reality, and what the truth reveals about the terrifying fog of war. 100,000 soldiers. The mightiest army the Habsburgs could assemble. Destroyed not by an enemy empire, but by a few barrels of schnapps, a dozen incompatible languages, and the oldest weapon in human history, fear. Every modern military on Earth now drills communication protocols and unified command languages. They do this because of nights like Karánsebes. The next time someone tells you the fog of war is just a metaphor, remember the army that fought itself and lost.